Today we're going to be in 1 Samuel. But before we dive in to more of 1 Samuel, I've got a question for all of you. So when you guys first started seeking Christ, when you started having a community to be with, to seek Christ, how uncomfortable was it when you got called to be the one to lead prayer? Had anyone ever been in that spot? Yeah? So a little tool that I wanted to bring up for that is a way to think of how to do prayer. And this is one of the many different ways, and it's called the WAR model, or worship, admit, and then request. Now, when in a prayer, I often find that sometimes we forget how to pray. And ultimately, we end up praying like God's a vending machine almost. We skip the worshiping and the admitting. We just go straight to the request. So, for me, that brings me to a question that I want us to dive into. When we forget to worship, when we forget to admit our faults to Christ and just treat him like a vending machine, what happens? What happens when we treat God like a tool to get the results that we want? Doing things in our time and not in his. Seeking our will, not his will. And we can see this in two different ways this morning as we go into 1 Samuel chapter 4. So turn with me. Now the Israelites went out to fight against the Philistines. The Israelites camped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines at Aphek. The Philistines deployed their forces to meet Israel. And as the battle spread, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 of them on the battlefield. You see, when the soldiers returned to the camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord bring defeat on us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the Lord's covenant from Shiloh, so that we may go out with us, so he may go out with us and save us from the hand of our enemies." So the people sent men to Shiloh. They brought back the ark of the covenant of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim. You see, and with the ark was Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, where they were with the ark. When the ark of the Lord's covenant came into the camp, all Israel raised such a great shout that the ground shook. Could you imagine that? Praising the Lord, and you guys could feel the vibration in the floor, not from the speakers, but from your own voices. Wouldn't that be amazing? Now you see, when this happened, what did the Philistines do? We can see in verse 6, hearing the uproar, the Philistines asked, "What's all this shouting in the Hebrew camp?" When they learned that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, the Philistines were afraid. "A god has come into the camp." They said, "Oh no! Nothing like this has happened before. We're doomed! Who will deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods?" They are the gods who struck the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. "Be strong, Philistines. Be men, or you will be subject to the Hebrews as they have been to you. Be men and fight." You know what I'm hearing right here? From the Philistines talking to each other? Grow up. Don't be scared, or you're going to end up being like the Hebrews were to us. Do you want that? We know how we treated them. Grow up and win the fight. So in verse 10, we see that the Philistines fought, and that the Israelites were defeated, and every man fled to his tent. You see, the slaughter was very great, and Israel lost 30,000 foot soldiers. That's not a small amount. But even throughout all of this, the ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, died. So this battle that played out, We can summarize it very quickly. Ready, fire, aim. They went in knowing that there was a battle coming. And they took action first before strategizing, before consulting, before doing what was right. Because in archery, if you do ready, fire, aim, are you guys likely to get a bullseye? No, not really. It's pretty hard, isn't it? But in here, we talk about the ark being captured. Now, the ark, that's the physical dwelling place of the Lord at this time. So what happened to it? Let's continue in chapter 5, verse 1. After the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then they carried the ark into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. When the people of Ashdod rose early in the next day, there was Dagon, fallen to his face on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So I want to be clear here. What they're saying is they put the ark next to their God, like he was beneath Dagon. They go to bed and they wake up that next morning, and their idol, their God, their statue, is now bowing down to the ark, to God. So what'd they do? They took Dagon, they put him back into his place. But again, following the morning when they rose, there was Dagon, fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. But that's not all. His head and his hands had been broken off and were lying on the threshold. Only his body remained. You see, God is showing up. He's showing that, no, I am the great Almighty. I am. So what'd they do? Well, we continue on into verse 6. We see that the Lord's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod and of its vicinity. You see, not only did he knock down Dagon, knock his head and hands off of the statue, but he brought devastation on them and afflicted them with tumors. You see, when the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of God of Israel must not stay here with us, because his hand is heavy on us and on Dagon, our God." So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines and asked them, "What shall we do with the ark of Israel?" They respond with, "Have the ark of God of Israel move to Gath." So they moved the ark of God of Israel. But after they had moved it, the Lord's hand was against the city, throwing it into a great panic. He afflicted the people of the city, both young and old, with an outbreak of tumors. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. So what was going on here? It's almost like there was this shiny object that came to Salina, Kansas. And then this outbreak of horrible things that everyone started pointing, oh, that shiny thing, it's causing all of these problems. Where can we move it to? So they move it to Council Grove. It goes to Council Grove, and Council Grove's like, we're not doing this. You're starting to kill off and plague our city. We're going to move it to Herington now. And we're not going to ask where to send it. We're just sending it. Okay? That's what's going on here. It's moving from town to town, and God is showing up everywhere in those towns, plaguing them with tumors. So we see, as the ark of God was entering Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, "They have brought the ark of God of Israel around us to kill us and our people." That would be like us in Herington crying out to Council Grove saying, "Why are you bringing that shiny thing here to kill us?" So they called together all the rulers of the Philistines. "Send the ark of God of Israel away. Let it go back to its own place, or it will kill us and our people." For death had filled the city with panic. God's hand was very heavy on it. Those who did not die were afflicted with the tumors, and the outcry of the city went up to heaven. So ultimately, what we can see here is that, yes, the ark is still, at that time, the place where God's presence is. We can see that he is still there and still moving. He's not going to be controlled by what someone else wants to do with where he's at. But what'd they do about the ark? They said, send it away. Did they? Did they successfully move it? Or did God still plague them? Let's look. Continue into chapter 6. When the ark of the Lord had been in the Philistine territory for 7 months, the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, what shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we should send it back to its place. They answered, if you return the ark of God of Israel, do not send it back without a gift. By all means, send a guilt offering to him. Then you will be healed, and you will know why his hand has not been lifted from you. The Philistines asked, what guilt offering should we send him? They replied, 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats, according to the number of Philistine rulers. Now, to help clarify this here, why tumors, why rats? Those were the plagues. That's what the Lord put upon them in these towns. So they were to make gold idols of those to send as the guilt offering. You see, continuing on in verse 4 here, because the same plague has struck both you and your rulers. Make models of the tumors and of the rats that are destroying the country, and give glory to Israel's God. Perhaps he will lift his hand from you and your gods and your land. Why do you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh did, when Israel's God dealt harshly with them? Did they not send the Israelites out so they could go on their way? So what'd they do? Well, they came up with a test to make sure that when sending the ark of God away, was it really God? Let's see what that was in verse 7. Now then, get a new cart ready with 2 cows that have been calved and have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take their calves away and pin them up. Take the ark of the Lord and put it on the back to him, or put it on the cart, and in the chest beside it put gold objects that you are sending back to him as a guilt offering. Send it on its way, but keep watching it. If it goes up to its own territory towards Beth Shemesh, then the Lord has brought this great disaster upon us. But if it does not, then we will know that it was not his hand that struck us, but that it happened to us by chance. Okay, so I had to reread this part right here several times to understand truly why this was a test. Because I haven't raised cows. So who in here understands that when a cow has a calf, that mama does not want to leave that baby? Is that cow going to be aggressive to get back to their baby if you take them apart? Yeah. So that's why they said, hey, we're going to have the mama cows put onto this cart, and if they go back to Beth Shemesh, and we have the babies over here, we know it's an act of Israel's God that we were plagued with these tumors. But if these cows behave in the way we know they should, then it was just by circumstance. Well, they did the test. What happened? Verse 10. So they did this. They took 2 such cows and hitched them to the cart and pinned up their calves. They placed the ark of the Lord on the cart, and along with it, the chest containing the gold rats and models of tumors. Then the cows went straight up towards Beth Shemesh, keeping on the road and lowing all the way. They did not turn to the right nor to the left. The rulers of the Philistines followed them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. You see, now the people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting their wheat in the valley. And when they looked up and saw the ark, they rejoiced. Remember, it had been 7 months since the presence of God was with them. They were rejoicing that God was back. But also they were harvesting wheat here. So that means there was a lot of them there to get this done. So it was a public display. Verse 14. The cart came to the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh, and there it stopped beside a large rock. The people chopped up the wood of the cart and sacrificed the cows as burnt offerings to the Lord. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord together with the chest containing the gold objects. See, and they placed them on the large rock. On that day, the people of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices to the Lord. The 5 rulers of the Philistines saw all this, and they returned that same day to Ekron. These are the gold tumors the Philistines sent as a guilt offering to the Lord, 1 each for Ashdod, Gaza, Akron, Goth, and Ekron. And the number of the gold rats was according to the number of the Philistine towns belonging to the 5 rulers. The fortified towns with their country villages, the large rock on which the Levites set the ark of the Lord, is witness to this day in the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh. So the Israelites, once the ark came back, started doing things a little bit differently. Because you remember, this part of Samuel is in the ending time of the Judges. It's when everyone did as they pleased. If you remember clear back, we were talking about Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, right? They were wicked sons, weren't they? We talked about this last time. We talked about how they did wrong in the Lord's eyes. So it sounds like Israel, when they had the ark before they lost it, they weren't following God very well. So, now that the ark is back, they're doing these offerings. So it sounds like maybe they had a little bit of adjustment. But I want to rewind a little bit. I want to go back actually into chapter 2. 1 Samuel 2:34. This is when a man of God came to Eli to tell him, hey, remember, this is what's going to come to your family. And what happens to your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be assigned to you. They will both die on the same day. This is God coming to Eli and telling him, hey, because you didn't do the actions that I needed you to do, that you as high priest needed to do for Israel, by standing up to the wicked people that were priests. Because back in the book of Leviticus, we know how the priests should have been doing the offerings. Hophni and Phinehas weren't doing those correctly. Eli should have stoned them. And this is God saying, since you won't, I will. Now if we go to chapter 4, verse 12, what did we skip? Let's find out. This is right after the defeat, right after the ark of God was captured. And we go into verse 12. That same day, a Benjaminite ran from the battle line and went to Shiloh with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he arrived there was Eli sitting on his chair by the side of the road, watching because his heart feared of the ark of God. When the man entered the town and told what had happened, the whole town sent up a cry. Eli heard the outcry and said, "What is the meaning of this uproar?" The man hurried over to Eli, who was 98 years old and whose eyes had failed so that he could not see. He told Eli, "I have just come from the battle line. I fled from it this very day." Eli asks, "What has happened?" The man who brought the news replied, "Israel fled before the Philistines, and the army has suffered heavy losses. Also your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, they're dead, and the ark of God has been captured." When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backwards off his chair by the side of the gate. You see, his neck was broken and he died, for he was an old man and was very heavy. He had led Israel for 40 years. Not only that, but his daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and near the time of delivery. When she heard the news of the ark of God had been captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she went into labor and gave birth, but was overcome by her labor pains. She was dying. The woman attending her said, "Don't despair, you have given birth to a son." But she did not respond or pay attention. She named the boy Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel because of the capture of the ark of God and the deaths of her father-in-law and her husband." She said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." So we can see God was present even when they lost the ark. Remember how we talked about ready, fire, aim? Sounds like they forgot to consult God. Should we bring you into this battle? Are you going to help us win? No. They tried using him like a tool, pulling him off the shelf, saying, "Because we grabbed you, we're taking you in, and now we're going to win." And because of that, God fulfilled his promises. You're not treating me right, so I'm leaving you. But also the consequences in which you know we're coming are coming now. Let's go back to when they received the ark back. Because God still had those plagues that were taunting the Philistines. And the Philistines said, "We don't want this no more." So they sent the ark back. They started doing the offerings again. They had that reality check because they realized from all of Eli's family dying, God was serious. He was real. He wasn't just a tool. But did they fully learn? Let's read chapter 6, verse 19. "But God struck down some of the inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh, putting 70 of them to death, because they looked into the ark of the Lord." You see, the people mourned because of the heavy blow the Lord had dealt them. And not only that, and the people at Beth-Shemesh asked, "Who can stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? To whom will the ark go up from here?" Then they sent messengers to the people of Kiriath-Jearim, saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to your town." So the men of Kiriath-Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord. They brought it to Abinadab's house on the hill and consecrated Eleazar, his son, to guard the ark of the Lord. So what happened? They learned, yes, we need to be doing the sacrifices. Yes, we need to be doing these things. But what's inside? Is it really what's said to be inside? Well, if you remember back from the book of Leviticus, they were told not to look. And because they did, because they were curious, because they wanted to know their things, God killed 70 of them for still not following his commands, for still using God like a tool and not having that relationship with him, not understanding the commands that he had given. So this brings me back to my original question. What happens when we treat God like a tool to get the results that we want? To win the war, to get the promotion, to have more money, to pray for health, to pray for discernment, and we forget to worship, and we forget to admit our faults to the Lord and treat him like a vending machine. We lose the fullness of his presence. If we treat God like a vending machine, we lose him. God is more than that. So stop putting God on a shelf like a tool and start building your life around his presence. Our service today was structured like the war prayer. We started with worship and praising God. We went into prayer, and I even heard John during worship actually praying in the style of war. Worship, admit faults, and request. We're now diving into the Word. And then, if there's anything after service today, we're here to pray with each other. What you need to remember, if anything out of today, is that God is not a tool to be used. God is Lord. Amen.